Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Happy Half Hour. We'll be getting started in just a minute. As we wait for folks to join us, just a reminder that the webinar today will be recorded and sent to participants this afternoon. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the virtual Happy Half Hour for Friday, December 4th. Today's topic is sales leadership takeaways that we have learned through the pandemic. This is our 22nd episode and our last for this year. And Russ and I were talking right before we went live that back in March, on March 20th, I believe it was, when we launched our first one, we certainly did not expect to still be here in December having these same conversations. But we are excited to be here. Again, this is our last one for the year. We will be back in January with new topics to help you navigate a new year, hopefully one that's a little bit less eventful than 2020 has been. But we've got some fresh programming planned, including some guest panelists. So keep an eye out for January. I believe our next one is on January 15th.
Right. Michelle, it's great to be back with you again. I'm sorry, did you have something? Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that when the recording comes out this afternoon, make sure that you take a look at the special promo code for our loyal listeners, because this is the holiday season. We have a gift for you. And in fact, producer Rich, if you would go ahead and put that information up in the chat, we're actually going to offer you an exclusive discount for our loyal viewers for our virtual selling essentials micro-learning series. So check that out. If you are tired of binge watching Netflix over the holidays, maybe take a binge watch on some virtual selling essentials. And now back to Russ.
Thanks, Michelle. Sorry, never want to step on a sponsor. You know, this has been an incredible time, an incredible year, obviously, for most of us. Days have seemed to be like repeats of each other. And I was mentioning to Michelle beforehand, here in California where I live, it was on March 18th that our governor issued a stay-at-home order. Here we are just 2 weeks short of 9 months later. And yesterday, he set the groundwork for what is expected to be new stay-at-home orders sometime over the next 10 days here in California. But what we want to talk about is the fact that not only did people get sick and suffer, but our customers and our businesses got sick and suffered during this pandemic. Some have recovered, some haven't. But in all of that time, we have seen some real key learnings that are important as people think about kind of how do I adjust my sales team? And we were laughing beforehand. If you're familiar with the 5 stages of grief that I forget what her first name was, Francis Kubler-Ross, came up with. You know, it starts with denial. That this pandemic isn't going to go on that long. And then we all got angry. And then we tried to bargain. We got depressed. And then finally, it's acceptance. And we would say that just based on our client conversations, we're now at a point of acceptance. People are saying this idea of selling non-face-to-face. So whether it's over a screen like we're on today, or whether it's more use of the phone or a use of an app to send messages, is here to stay, at least for some portion of the process. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What are the big takeaways that we've seen over the last 9 months?
Yes, Russ, and you know, we are feeling a little bit reflective as we look back on what we've learned. We want to hear from you all, though, and producer Rich, if you can launch those polls, we have some poll questions for you. What we'd like to know is what has this impact been on your business compared to what you thought it was going to be? When do you think things are going to come back to normal? What's your thoughts or your company's thoughts on the pandemic? I mean, the vaccine that's coming out, as well as work from home policies. And as we're waiting for some of these responses to come through, Russ, I was looking back at our second webinar that we did. It was March 27th, and we asked folks in a survey when they thought the pandemic would end. And 8% said they thought it would last through the end of 2020. So, here we are. It's the end of 2020, and 35% had said they thought it would be 6 to 8 weeks. So, who knew?
This is one of those bets you didn't want to win. And I don't even know if there's a prize, but for those of you who had that kind of foresight, that's great.
Yeah.
In the poll, there are 4 different questions, so be sure you scroll down and kind of click on your answer for all of them. It's a great way to kind of snapshot where we are as a group, and we'll share the answers with you in just a couple of minutes.
Yes, and one of the questions that we're asking about is work from home, and I saw a recent quote. This was from Forrester. They did a pandemic study, and they found that 53% of workers who are currently remote hope that they will be able to continue to work from home more often, even after the pandemic ends. And so I think that's got some real implications, not just for salespeople that may be working remotely, but for their customers. So customers that they might be used to seeing face-to-face may still be remote to some extent, even after the pandemic is over. So let's take a look at these poll results. And it looks like 43% said that the impact of COVID has been worse than they expected, but 43% said about what they expected. So that's interesting. And only 14% said their business was better than expected.
Yeah, I think all of us kind of couldn't imagine what we've gone through the last 9 months when we first heard the news. And I think that's fairly the indications here are fairly consistent across the board. We've seen customers who are having record years if they're in the PPE or business or anything that has to do with online. But for those, especially capital equipment oriented companies, it's been a tougher year because budgets have pulled back. There was an announcement this morning that Chevron is cutting back 26% on their capital expenditures over the next couple of years. So painful if you sell to that market. Looks like, boy, we're kind of split as well, but now we've gone from it being 6 to 8 weeks to maybe forever, Michelle. Looks like, again, 43% say it's at least 12 months or more until things go back to normal. And there's even some belief that things will never be the same. And I think that's almost an easy answer that, yes, this world will always be a little bit different, although hopefully we won't always communicate face-to-face with masks like some of us are forced to do now.
Exactly. And it looks like 57% of our participants say that their companies will ask their employees to get the COVID vaccine, but they won't require it. And employees who have been working from the office will, for the most part, it looks like half the group is saying that yes, they'll be able to continue working from home partially if they want to post-pandemic. So some interesting implications, I think, for moving forward. Interestingly enough, too, as well, I saw a recent study from McKinsey. They are now predicting, at least here in the U.S., some level of normalcy return between Q3 and Q4 of 2021, based on the approval of the vaccine in December or January. So, some level of normalcy, whatever that might end up looking like.
There was also, Michelle, a statement this morning I heard on NPR. They did an interview with someone from Indiana Public Health, who said that they in Indiana expected to be able to immunize 200,000 people by the end of December. And so it looks like for those, and we won't get into who should get the vaccine first or effectiveness or anything, but it looks like the vaccines are coming faster. So maybe in this case, we'll beat Q4 to 2021. At least many of us hope so.
Yes, and let's hope that in our December 2021 virtual Happy Half Hour, we will be talking about something other than COVID and masks and vaccines, and reflecting back on the year will be somewhat different in a positive way, for sure.
We'll even do it remotely from, say, Natty Green's in Greensboro or something.
That's right.
A pumpkin spice ale or something, or whatever people drink this time of year.
Well, let's take a look at COVID's impact on B2B sales. And as again, this is a reflective moment. This is lessons learned. I think there's no surprises in some of this data here. McKinsey put out an article in October simply titled COVID's Impact on B2B Sales, and their findings. B2B sales revenue from more traditional in-person sales channels was down 55%. B2B revenue from video conference channels was up significantly, up 69%. And actually through chat channels, it was, I believe, 31%. And interestingly enough, 75% of B2B decision makers are saying now that online and remote selling is equally or more effective for engaging existing customers. And 76% say that online and remote selling is equally or more effective for acquiring new sellers. And we've talked a lot about prospecting and lead generation this year and how it is a critical issue. And what we're seeing is that sellers and customers are getting much more comfortable with interacting with each other in these online channels.
And I would say smarter as well, Michelle. When I talk to our clients, what I'm hearing is people are finding methods that work. For a lot of us early on, we were getting a lot of requests to get connected on LinkedIn, which immediately would create a sales presentation or a sales message back to us. But now I'm seeing at least more invitations, more third-party referrals, more connections for real conversation. And that just is much more appealing to me than when I look at somebody who I have no relationship with, no connections or shared interests in, and yet they're trying to connect with me to quote unquote build their network. So smarter is also important here.
Right, absolutely. And another interesting tidbit that I found, I think the prevailing wisdom pre-COVID was that remote works best for smaller purchases. And that's not the case anymore. So McKinsey also found that 70% of B2B decision makers said that they would be open to making new, not even existing, but new purchases remotely in amounts greater than $50,000, and 27% would spend more than $500,000. So we're really having to transform the way we think about interacting with our customers and really what's possible. And again, major implications, I think, for sales teams. And ultimately, digital is here to stay. And as Russ was saying, I think maybe a lot of teams are starting to get to that level of acceptance. 89% of companies are expecting their new digital go-to-market strategies to stick for more than 12 months. So we're looking at, a year from now, we're still going to be perhaps seeing the same hybrid type interactions. Hopefully face-to-face selling will be back to some extent, but it does appear that the market is saying that digital is here to stay. There was a quote in this same article, business-to-business sales leaders have moved from being forced to adopt digital in reaction to widespread shutdowns in the early stages of COVID to a growing conviction that digital is the way to go. So there's certainly a lot of benefits, lower cost of sale, greater territory coverage, but the implication is that the field salesperson and the inside salesperson are starting to kind of mesh together in terms of their responsibilities. So again, I think moving forward into 2021, we're still going to see a lot of this of virtual interactions. And now a word from our sponsor. So clearly the shift for sales leaders and sales teams has major implications in terms of how they manage their teams and how they coach. So if you are looking to refine the skills that you need to help your team thrive in 2021, consider our Sales Leadership Accelerator. And producer Rich is going to put some contact information up there. So the Sales Leadership Accelerator is an 8-session workshop that will help leaders really transform how they focus their attention, how they coach their teams through either virtual or in-person sales interactions. It's an opportunity to really connect with peers who are leaders in other organizations and going through some of the same challenges that you are. So for more information, including how to sign up for our 2021 dates at 2020 prices, email contact@thebrooksgroup.com.
I'd say one of the key points in that presentation, by the way, is not just that you as a sales leader are responsible for the people who work for you, but also the recognition and the communication of how do you work with the people above you? How do you get them to help realize what's sure about forecasts, what's iffy about forecasts, what are challenging, and increasingly, how do you engage other managers and other divisions or other groups, leaders, operations, or R&D, whatever it might be, in the selling process. So it's not just all about how you manage down, but it's also how you lead 360 in an organization. So let's talk about some of the key takeaways that we've gotten so far. And, at the Brooks Group for a few years, we've talked about sales culture and how important it is as we think about kind of what we're doing. And it was always a soft skill. And the people we worked with would ask us, well, what does that really mean? And why is it important? And why can't I just drive this based on metrics and numbers? And we've seen a number of organizations who have moved that way. With this pandemic, your culture has all of a sudden jumped to the front. And the reason for that is the more trust you have, the more ability you've been able to work through restructuring, changes, whether it be to comp, territories, messages, methodologies, and have your teams follow you. Those teams where the culture was broken or there were difficulties, we've seen a lot of breakdown. If it was only about trying to beat your number month after month after month, and all of a sudden you started to struggle, then culture was going to be a good culture gets you through that. A bad culture doesn't. And so just a reminder that we need to be thinking and working on how do we continue to build those cultures. You're going to see it if you haven't seen it already. Our prediction is that over the next 6 months, those cultures that are struggling are going to see more turnover than those who haven't. As Michelle's already shared, virtual or remote is here to stay. We have a basic premise that salespeople like people. They like to be with other people. And so they're always going to be both more comfortable and prefer in person. In fact, even in our virtual programs, the number one point that's made is, I just wish we could all be together in the same room. It's never about, lack of ability to communicate concepts or ability to grasp it. It's always just like, I like the camaraderie of being together. But what we're seeing is not just the acceptance, as Michelle has shared earlier, from buyers and from sellers, but I'm talking to more and more clients who are saying, you know what, if my people are off the road a little bit, and again, you will continue to have in-person sales calls, but if I can get them off the road a little bit more and they can more effectively use virtual, they could use video, they can use messaging or email or even the telephone more effectively, it's going to be able to increase the number of accounts they cover and the territory they cover. As somebody said to me this week, you no longer have to say, I'll get that to you, later today, or I'll get it to you tomorrow because I'm traveling today. Now you can just step up and get the information to them. Plus, we're going to, I believe, continue to see tight travel and expense budgets over the next 12 to 24 months. And as well as customers not letting salespeople into their buildings. This is, again, something I've heard a lot this week, where in our area that things were starting to loosen up. We could put our people back on the road, at least regionally or locally, but the clients weren't letting them into the buildings, and that's really tough. The key step here is really, how do you deconstruct your sales process so that you use the right communications medium at each step? How does a half-day face-to-face meeting break down into a series of maybe phone calls, virtual meetings, text messages, et cetera? And the ones who do that best and most effectively are going to be the teams that succeed in the long run. By the way, if you've got any questions, go to our Q&A. You're welcome to pop up questions there, and we'll be glad to answer those. If our particular takeaways, or even if you've learned something over the last 9 months, we'd love to know what that is. The next big takeaway area for us is the idea that selling really hasn't changed, and yet it has. The basic selling skills are magnified in the idea of virtual. The good are doing well. The people who were practicing poor habits before, it's getting worse. And one of just the points I'll make is there's some data out from Gong.io. They looked at 100,000 sales calls. They found that good reps ask more questions and listen longer in a meeting, about 55% of the time, whereas poor reps tend to listen only 35% of the time. Put somebody like that in virtual, they're going to want to move faster, they're going to talk more, and so therefore you see an amplification of that bad habit. That all boils down to coaching, which is a key element not only of the sales leadership accelerator we just talked about, but even for some sales leaders, they're comfortable with windshield time, or they're comfortable over a meal or over a drink at the end of the day. But getting on the phone and having a pointed conversation is difficult for some leaders, or having an effective conversation is difficult for others. And so we're seeing a lot of emphasis with our clients coming back and saying, how can you help my managers coach the people through this? Not just in deals, but now it's about dealing with this new environment, dealing with their ability to cope, as well as the tech tools. As we've rolled out these new things like Zoom, how do you make people really effective with that? And one suggestion and thing I'd would recommend is we're seeing people starting to do peer-to-peer mentoring and practice, where you take maybe somebody younger but more tech savvy, pair them with a more seasoned selling professional who's maybe not as tech savvy, and let them learn from each other. The next generation, millennials, Gen Zs, love to be able to give as they learn, and it's a win-win. It offloads the sales leader from things. As I mentioned earlier, the telephone is an incredible instrument. Some generations of sales people have moved away from it in favor of text messages and emails. We're finding it coming back, that ability to not only have the words, but also the tone behind them is really critical as you think about communication and how do you really move information through. And ultimately, though, I think, and this is really my recommendation, ultimately it's about how do you make the tool invisible? When I talk to people and they say, I've got to be in person because it's all about relationship building and I can only build relationships face to face. Well, it's not totally true. You can only historically build relationships face to face. But now it's rethinking of what does that relationship mean? And I was just working with a client not long ago who didn't really clearly understand the value that they brought to the transaction. And so pre-COVID, they would always rush to a lower price because they were afraid their competitor had been talking to the prospect, and they knew that there was one foreign supplier who was lower priced. And so we talked about it, and literally just by asking the question, what other, what else have you looked at or what else have you seen, has allowed them to make, a not insignificant improvement in their gross margins, because now they're just able to ask the question and move through it. They understand the value. That's what builds relationships. Another thing we see that builds relationships is being comfortable with being virtual. And you may need to have practice between two individuals. I hear a lot from clients, it's like, well, my customers won't turn the cameras on. Okay, work and focus on getting them comfortable and being comfortable yourself on the medium, and then start turning cameras on. Nobody wants to turn and expose more of themselves in an uncomfortable media. And then last kind of our big area of takeaways, and I see some questions pouring in. Thanks. We'll get to those in a minute. It boils down to two questions. How are you helping your customers get better? We have, even though Michelle says that people are finding new accounts, it's still the area where people are struggling the most. And so really make sure that your organization has shifted to loving and caring for its customers. I have mentioned this before, but I used to have a boss who said sales sells the first unit. Everybody else in the company sells the second unit and everyone else. Because if they don't do their job, it doesn't matter. And Michelle mentioned this greater connection between the field sales team and inside or CSSRs. A lot of sales leaders have known that's been a problem. They've been working on it and fixing it because it's really important now. As research of some of our clients have shown us that availability, the customers want a seamless answer They want to know that you talk to each other internally as you're talking to them. And so that's how you take care of those accounts. Referrals matter more than ever, as Michelle and I were talking about. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. If you use it right, use it as introductions. If you know someone, ask to be introduced. I used this about 3 weeks ago. The individual got a meeting. His very first question was, how did you know to get a hold of the person that introduced me? It was a two-way jump. It was from my friend to me, to another friend I had to the individual. But there was a lot of trust along that path. And it proved to this individual that this was a person who could solve problems and think creatively. And then I think the other thing that's really important about the questions we need to ask is, if we're going to go get a new lead, what's our compelling offer? So many people that I talk to start with, we sell this, or tell me what your problem is and I can fix it for you. What you're seeing with the successful sales organizations is as they prospect for new business, understanding what value they bring to organizations or to industries and leading with that. Making it very clear that we've been working with companies like yours to see improvements in, and then you name the specific areas. And we'd like to come in and just give you an update on some of the things that we've done together with those companies, not by name, but just to give them a sense that they can improve. Because this idea of what are my peers doing during this time is still really critical. And then the last thought, once you know how you help your customers get better, how well is your team executing? This is about coaching, but these 3 areas specifically are ones that I would strongly encourage you to focus in on. Are they doing the job of planning? More calls does not equal better calls. Do they have a clear goal for why they're making the connection? Do they have the right questions to ask? Do they know where they're going? You might challenge some of your teams to shorten their calls. I was working with a client this last week who said, we've gone from default 60-minute calls to default 30-minute calls. It makes my team prepare more and be sharper in that meeting, and we get more meetings because of it. Make sure you've got the right questions you want to ask, and ask those with confidence. Again, in this time where everybody's time is more valuable, they don't want to have their time wasted. So get to the point, ask the question, you'll get the answers. And for the most part, make sure you're closely aligned with a really serious need. Incremental, very small incremental improvements are not going to happen today. It's going to be the bigger thing. So focus on the areas where you can bring a bigger win to your organization. And kind of in that execution mode, the last thing I'm going to add is grab a handful of metrics. We talk to clients frequently, and we'll ask things like, well, how long does your average sale take? Or what's your average sale size? Or what are your metrics at each stage, from initial contact to first meeting to making it an opportunity to being able to win? And you'd be surprised how many people just don't have that data. And they'll say, well, we can't track that because we don't have, an analyst, or we don't have all this data. But those are things that even on spreadsheets, you can calculate at some level. And if you're not looking at those sort of in-process movements, it's really hard to get better overall at the job that you're doing. The percent of time, the question was around percent of time good reps listen. The Gong.io study said that good reps listen 55% of the time, meaning top reps. And I don't remember if it's the top 20% or top 25, but one of those two. The best reps are listening 55% of a meeting. The low performing reps, same percentage, 20 or 25%, are listening about 35% of the meeting. So really encourage your teams to be kind of measuring just how well they listen. And that is an advantage right now of the tools that we have. With virtual, you can join, or you can listen to recordings, you can get stats that help you and your team recognize that. Any other questions, please just go ahead and punch it up in the Q&A window. If not, I'll give you kind of my 5 takeaways here. Number 1 is understand how your culture is either helping or hurting you. And yes, it's a soft skill, but people are people, and we've got to understand how to encourage and work with them in this incredibly difficult time. Virtual and remote, it's not going to go away. It will be here. So you may as well figure it out and embrace it. It's a magnifier of someone's sales skills, as I said earlier. The good succeed, the bad continue to struggle. So look at how do you improve their sales, either sales skills or virtual skills. There are plenty of opportunities, including our micro modules and a lot of the workshops we're doing these days. Really focus and sharpen your focus on the value add you bring to a customer, and then coach your teams to make sure with some metrics they're executing better. They need that as well. There was a new article published by McKinsey this week about pandemic fatigue, and people are getting tired, and they need some metrics and easy things that they can look at and say, yes, I'm doing the right things. And so help them figure out what those are and get better, because as things start to open up, all studies say that they believe the economy will accelerate again, and market share is there to win for those who are quick out of the blocks. That's what I've got, Michelle. If there's no further questions, we'll maybe give it a minute or two.
So far, no other questions, but while we're waiting to see if any come in, as we said, this is our last session for 2020. But we will be back on Friday, January 15th. New year and new topics. And then again, too, if you're interested in learning more about our Sales Leadership Accelerator, email contact@thebrooksgroup.com. And again, I also want to mention, right now, we are still offering those 2021 dates at our 2020 rates. So you might want to check that out before January 1st.
And someone asked whether or not we recorded this session, and we do. We'll send it to everyone who is registered, correct, Michelle?
That is correct. And you can also find previous recordings on our website as well. And be sure to check that email with the recording, because there will be a special promo code for an exclusive discount for our micro module series.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We enjoy doing these because, again, we get so many questions come from our clients, and we're glad you're here that we can share and be a resource for you. Have a great holiday season, and may 2021 be better than last year, than this year. Is that a low bar or what?
Nowhere to go but up, right, Russ?
We hope so. We hope so, Michelle. Let's not doom it.
Don't jinx it. Yes. Well, thank you to everyone for sticking with us for 22 episodes in 2020. Have a wonderful new year, and we look forward to seeing you all in January.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.